You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
First question, and this is probably the most important question of the offseason. Is Syracuse basketball going to have the money to compete with the big boys for players this offseason? We know from various reports that Syracuse basketball's budget, NIL, rev sharing, it's going to be significantly increased from a year ago. It was reported that Syracuse basketball's budget for this season was $2.5 million, which ranked in the middle of the ACC. And I have said before here on this podcast, but I will say it again just as a reminder, Syracuse basketball, even if they didn't increase their budget, would still get an additional $1 million, bringing it to $3.5 million because they're playing in the Vegas NIL era tournament next year. So that's $3 million just for showing up to that tournament next year that you can distribute to your players and, well, promise them right now that they will get a cut of that money. We also know that Syracuse basketball will spend to the limit as far as rev sharing. Rev sharing is a brand new thing that is going to start this summer, but I believe it can apply to the players right now. The maximum allowed is $20.5 million. Now, that doesn't mean that $20.5 million is going to go to the men's basketball program. What it does mean is that Syracuse basketball is going to spend $20.5 million on players and coaches for all of its athletic programs. Most of it is going to go to football and men's basketball. So they're going to have a lot more money to work with this offseason compared to last offseason. Having said that, back to the question, is it going to be enough? Because you know the other schools are not going to just stop spending. You think they're going to stop? You think Louisville, who reportedly had a $4.5 million NIL budget, and after the season that they just had, and currently in the NCAA tournament, you think that they're going to stop at $4.5 million? Probably not, right? And I would be very surprised if they did not increase that significantly this offseason to compete further in the ACC and around the country. NC State, they just hired Will Wade about an hour ago from the time I'm recording this. You think Will Wade took the NC State job for them to be poverty, for them to not spend any money on players? Hello? So Syracuse basketball, I hear you. I know that there's going to be more money in the program, but is it going to be enough? That's a question that needs to be answered this offseason, and we'll find out based on the quality of players they get in the transfer portal. But let's be optimistic here on this podcast because there is a lot of negativity with the Syracuse basketball program, rightfully so, because they stunk last season. But let's be optimistic here for a moment. Let's say that Syracuse basketball has the money to be able to get any player or players it wants and needs this offseason, right? Let's just say that I know Kadari Richmond's out of eligibility, but if Kadari Richmond were to enter the transfer portal like he did a year ago, Syracuse basketball would be able to match whatever St. John's got him for in the portal last year. Let's say that can happen, right? Syracuse basketball has the money. Cool. But do they have the relationships? Relationships matter, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever I have on Locked On college football recruiting expert Brian Smith here on the podcast, he always emphasizes one thing when it comes to recruiting, and it also applies to the transfer portal. Relationships. Yes, even in the era of NIL and revenue sharing and all this money that's being thrown around, the core of recruiting and in the transfer portal still is relationships. Of course, money matters. Of course it does. But when the money is close, a player will often decide to go to a school that he or she feels most comfortable with and he or she feels has the best relationship with. Think about Fran Brown over at Syracuse football. How did he get Kyle McCord in the transfer portal last year? Think. Was it because Syracuse basketball gave him the most money or Syracuse football gave him the most money? Was it? Or was it because they had a relationship going back to when Kyle McCord was a child? Relationships matter, right? How is Fran Brown able to compete with some of the top high school kids in Florida in recruiting when you got the big three Florida schools that you got to worry about? And you know that other big programs are going to tap into the state of Florida to try to get their top players. How is Fran Brown able to compete? How is he getting Demetrius Samuel? How did he just get Jarius Rogers, a 4-star in the class of 2026? How? Relationships, folks. It's relationships. Heck, Syracuse basketball with JJ Starling. How did they get him in the transfer portal? And it happened right away when they got him a couple of years ago. Hint, he's from Baldwinsville. Bottom line, not only does Syracuse basketball need to be financially competitive this offseason, right? You can't offer a player $500,000 and another school offers him $1 million. You're not going to get the player no matter how great the relationship is. So you need to be financially competitive, but once you are financially competitive, do they have the relationships to be able to attract the top players? Those are the two big questions for Syracuse basketball this offseason.